Right, so when Zoran Mamdani clinched the Democratic nomination for mayor of New York City, it wasn't just a political upset. It was a tectonic shift that had the sphincters of Zionist powerbrokers from Manhattan to Tel Aviv clenching in fury. In a city where AIPAC's money flows freer than subway delays and where supporting Israel has long been considered a bipartisan rite of passage, the rise of a proudly socialist, Muslim, pro-Palestinian candidate with the audacity to say he'd arrest Benjamin Netanyahu, nothing short of revolutionary. Mandani didn't just win a primary, he led a match under the crumbling facade of America's reflexive support for Israeli apartheid. And he did it from within the very heart of the empire, from arguably the most Zionist place in the US. So if this is what can happen in New York, what we're seeing here and now might just be the beginning of the Great American Intifada. Right, so in a result that has stunned pundits, political operatives and power brokers alike across the United States, blown the polling of just mere days ago apart, Zoran Mamdani, a Muslim, socialist, vocal supporter of Palestine, has clinched the Democratic nomination for New York City mayor. His surprise win is much more than just a primary upset, though. The scale of what Mamdani has just achieved is immense. It's a seismic political event that challenges decades of entrenched Zionist influence, neoliberal orthodoxy, and anti-socialist dogma in one of the most symbolically powerful and Zionist cities in the Western world. New York, with its immense Jewish population, the largest outside of Israel, has long been seen as America's Zionist bastion. Political candidates across the spectrum have traditionally courted this constituency with unwavering support for the state of Israel, and certainly it was down that well-worn and tried and tested path that Mamdani's rival Andrew Cuomo went. Yet Mamdani, a figure who has been quite prepared to call Israel's actions in Gaza a genocide, who has pledged to arrest Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu should he step foot in New York, and who coined the slogan "Globalize the Intifada," now desperately being attempted to be weaponized against him, has emerged as the leading contender to become the city's next mayor. Born to an Indian Muslim family in Uganda and raised in Queens, Zoran Mamdani is the son of acclaimed filmmaker Miran Nair. His political coming of age took place at the intersection of immigrant struggles, anti-racist activism and pro-Palestinian solidarity. As a college student, he founded a chapter of Students for Justice in Palestine, and he's long been involved in the Boycott, Divestment, Sanctions movement, BDS, that global campaign challenging Israeli apartheid and occupation. In 2018, he became a US citizen, and in 2020, he was elected to the New York State Assembly as a member of the Democratic Party and as a member of the Democrats Socialists of America, the DSA, representing Astoria. There he championed tenants' rights, universal healthcare, and transit equity. But what's made him an icon to some and a pariah to others is his unflinching stance on Israel and Palestine. In a much circulated interview with Mehdi Hassan, Mamdani declared that as mayor, he would arrest Netanyahu if he ever visited New York.
And Mayor Mamdani, would you welcome Prime Minister Netanyahu to New York City for whatever he comes for, given the US is not a signatory to the ICC, so he can travel to the US, unlike a lot of other countries. Would a Mayor Mamdani welcome Benjamin Netanyahu to the city?
No. As mayor, New York City would arrest Benjamin Netanyahu. This is a city that our values are in line with international law. It's time that our actions are also.
Even though the US is not a signatory to the ICC?
No, it's time that we actually step up and make clear what we are willing to do to showcase the leadership that is sorely missing in the federal administration.
It is a huge statement. Under no obligation to do this, as Hassan made clear, the US are not part of the ICC after all, not signed up to the Rome Statute. That doesn't mean they should continue to ignore international law, as Mamdani made clear there. His position, seen by many as both a moral stand and a political line in the sand, and has cemented his image as a potentially radical reformer. Mamdani's opponent, Andrew Cuomo, on the other hand, former governor and establishment darling, was lavishly backed by pro-Israel groups like AIPAC and other Zionist donors, and why wouldn't he? He was literally part of the legal team that tried to get Netanyahu off that ICC arrest warrant that Mamdani's saying he might actually enforce. Cuomo ran on a staunchly pro-Israel platform, betting on New York's historic allegiance to Zionist politics, and yet despite the deluge of money and endorsements, Cuomo lost, in no small part because Israeli propaganda has collapsed. So why now? What shifted in the last week as polling shifted Mamdani's way then? And whilst I'm not taking anything away from Mamdani's campaign, which was brilliant, it was grassroots-led, lots of small donations adding up, quite reminiscent of the Corbyn campaign here in the UK in the last several years. In large part, it was because of Israel's war in Iran, though. The brutal and unprovoked military offensive started by Israel, widely condemned for serving no interest but Netanyahu's, and all the more so after the US bombed those nuclear sites. It reignited global outrage against Israeli aggression once again, already decimated over their actions in Gaza. In the US, it pushed the limits of even staunchly pro-Israel Democrats. Mamdani's consistent framing of the war as genocide and his demand for accountability gave disaffected voters, especially young, progressive and non-white constituents, a reason to turn out. So in this context, Netanyahu may have himself unwittingly ensured his own exile from New York. A Mamdani mayoral victory with that promise of arrest bars the Israeli Prime Minister from, for example, ever addressing the UN General Assembly in person again, as the United Nations headquarters are in New York City. The symbolic implications are massive. Israel's most powerful leader could be rendered unwelcome in America's most Israel-friendly city, no longer as friendly as it once was, though, clearly. Predictably, though, Mamdani has faced an avalanche of criticism. Donald Trump has gone ape, more so than usual, labelling Mamdani a communist lunatic. And mainstream media outlets have amplified accusations that his use of the phrase globalize the Intifada implies violence against Jews, and he has consistently faced questions on this, though you'll note that Andrew Cuomo has faced none for backing Netanyahu and being part of that legal team that tried to get Netanyahu off that ICC arrest warrant that Mamdani, it seems, might actually choose to uphold. Why is that, I wonder? Special mention also for one of the UK's most ridiculous right-wing comic books that masquerades as a newspaper, the Daily Mail, who published a smear of Mamdani as a Nepo baby, given his mother Mira Nair is a filmmaker with ties to Hollywood. I'm sorry, but have they never heard of Donald Trump and looked into his hideously grotesque life of privilege? They're in for a hell of a shock if they ever discover Fred Trump, aren't they? In reality, Intifada means uprising, rebellion. It's a term long used in the Palestinian struggle against occupation. Mamdani has clarified repeatedly that the term, in his usage, is about resisting systems of oppression from Gaza to the Bronx. These attacks echo the smear campaign against Jeremy Corbyn in the UK, whose solidarity with Palestine was weaponised against him under the guise of anti-Semitism. As with Corbyn, critics conflate opposition to Israeli policies with hatred of Jewish people, an intellectually dishonest and deeply harmful tactic that undermines the very word anti-Semitism and makes the world more dangerous for all Jewish people, not just the ones who happen to be Zionist. Mamdani's record speaks for itself. He has consistently denounced anti-Semitism whilst criticising Israeli apartheid, and that is entirely legitimate. Even his family have come under fire as targets for attack to get one up on Mamdani, and shows the uphill climb that he actually still has, as the establishment will now come for him more than ever. His mother, Mira Nair, has come under fire for being one of the signatories to a 2025 letter calling on the Oscars to bar Gal Gadot, the former Israeli soldier and vocal defender of Israeli policies in Gaza, who these days gets paid a lot to try and act. That Mamdani's familial ties are being used to question his fitness to lead is a testament to how far the establishment is willing to go to suppress voices of dissent or challenging the establishment. America has long been allergic to socialism and the notion of it, a legacy of McCarthyism and Cold War propaganda. Even Bernie Sanders, arguably the most successful modern socialist, has had to temper his rhetoric to be electorally viable. Yet Mamdani has been confident enough to embrace democratic socialism unapologetically and go far further, calling for public housing, universal healthcare, worker cooperatives, green jobs. His vision of New York City is one where the working class gets empowered, the rich get taxed, and politics serves the many and not the few. His win is not just a leftist victory, it's a class victory. New Yorkers, especially renters, gig workers, immigrants and youth, are tired of neoliberalism's empty promises and never giving them anything to vote for or support. Mamdani's offering them a bold alternative, and that vision is resonating with them. So if elected in September, Mamdani would become New York's first ever Muslim mayor. And in a country where Islamophobia has been normalised across political discourse, treated as a nonsense, and where alternatively anti-Semitism is put on a pedestal of falsehoods, where Muslim voices are often marginalised or vilified, this is nothing short of revolutionary. It sends a powerful message to America and to the rest of the world that Muslims are not just part of the fabric of the country, they can lead it. And this symbolism is particularly potent given New York's post-9/11 surveillance of Muslim communities, including the notorious NYPD demographics unit that spied on mosques and student groups. Mamdani's win represents a reversal of that narrative now, a shift from suspicion to legitimate leadership. The Democratic establishment is clearly unnerved. Mamdani's victory has rattled traditional power centres, which sees his rise as a threat to the status quo. The fear isn't just about Israel, it's about a resurgent left that is pro-labor, anti-corporate, and unafraid to confront America's foundational myths. Candidates like Eric Adams running as an independent and Curtis Sliwa, the Republican, are scrambling to appeal to centrist and conservative voters. But in a deep blue city like New York, Mamdani enters a general election now as the favourite. Adams' administration has been marred by scandals and budget cuts, and he far too pro-Israel in himself, while Sliwa remains a fringe figure. Mamdani's clarity, his consistency, and his courage give him a real shot at victory and real change for New York. Mamdani's rise represents the most significant breakthrough for pro-Palestine politics in US history. Until now, unconditional support for Israel has been a bipartisan consensus. That consensus is beginning to crack. From college campuses to union halls, support for Palestinian rights is growing. In Congress, members like Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar have opened the door. But Mamdani's potential mayorship, at the heart of the nation's media and finance capital, would be a seismic jump. This is not just about Palestine, though. It's about the emergence of a new American left, one that sees global solidarity as integral to domestic justice. Mamdani's campaign linked the struggle of Palestinians with that of tenants in Harlem and workers in Queens and students in the Bronx. So his message is very clear. Our liberation is all bound up together. Mamdani has said that Intifada is not just for Palestine. It's for anyone who refuses to be crushed by the weight of oppression. His campaign has become a rallying cry for those who are tired of choosing between the lesser of two evils. It is a call to choose another way. His victory in the Democratic primary is a win for truth over fear, for solidarity over tribalism, for justice over profit. It is a declaration that the old playbook of fear-mongering, smear campaigns, and billionaire-funded politics can be beaten. In September, New Yorkers will decide whether to continue down the well-worn path of compromise and corruption, or whether to choose real meaningful change. They got a real opportunity here, which comes so rarely in American politics. They really need to take it. Meanwhile, when it comes to that conflict between Israel and Iran, Donald Trump, ever the establishment figure, sought to crush the Iranian nuclear project, and he's failed at that. Though he is, of course, still throwing his toys out of the pram at anyone who says otherwise. But just as Mamdani's democratic socialism and pro-Palestinianism are on the rise, his actions have had real and possibly terminal consequences. Get all the details of that story in his video recommendation here as your suggested next one. Please do also hit like, share and subscribe if you haven't done so already, so as to ensure you don't miss out on all new daily content, as well as spreading the word and helping to support the channel at the very same time, which is very much appreciated. Holding power to account for ordinary working class people. I'll hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.